if I was to talk about Bombay in public, except on Spectator TV, I would be regarded as being eccentric or politically incorrect or perhaps even insulting. And I wondered, why on earth have we come to do that?
Nigel Biggar, thank you for joining me on Spectator TV. Now, you wrote a Substack piece quite recently, and the title was, "It's Bombay, not Mumbai." It's picked up a little bit of traction. I'm especially interested in it because my father was born there.
In India?
Yes,
Oh, right.
yes,
Yep.
in Bombay.
Right.
And
Right.
I wanted to understand, before we get into the details, why were you motivated to write about this?
Well, as you know, Natasha, I've done a lot of writing and thinking about colonial things. And just recently I was reading a history of the East India Company, and also talking with Tirthankar Roy, the professor of the history of colonial economics at the LSE, and reading his stuff, and learnt that Bombay, Madras and Calcutta, before the East India Company arrived, were in one case a bunch of islands, in the other cases villages. It was the East India Company that built those three cities into the major international commercial hubs they became. And then I got to thinking, well, so how come we now don't refer to them by those anglicised names? And we talk about Mumbai, not Bombay, Chennai, not Madras, Kolkata rather than Calcutta. Why are we doing that? And that's really what sparked my interest in that topic.
It changed in 1995 under the Shiv Sena government, is that correct? Why did they want to change it?
I'm told there are a variety of different reasons. I'd assumed this was a kind of an expression of Hindu nationalism, from Delhi. But no, I think it had more to do with local provincial politics. And in some cases, I guess local provincial chauvinists wanting to impress regional identity on the names of these cities. But as several people have pointed out to me, I mean, Tirthankar Roy makes this point. Roy's from Bengal, where Calcutta is. The actual character of these cities, which became major hubs of international commerce, was highly cosmopolitan, with people of all sorts from all over the world in them. They really weren't characterized by their local environment. So as it were, the impression of a local identity on them is a novel and unprecedented thing.
Mm. I find it very interesting when I'm around Indian people. If I was to say Bombay, I'm never corrected. And if you're around English people or any sort of westernized people and you were to say, my father was born in Bombay, they would immediately say, oh, do you mean Mumbai? But
yes.
actually, I think my dad doesn't care either way. And I think Indians typically don't care, apart from perhaps the Maharashtrians, where it's part of their language. It does matter a bit more to them. Would that be right?
I've certainly had lots of people of Indian ethnicity and some people living in India who've made it clear they don't use these new names, partly because they regard the new names as chauvinist, whereas they think of themselves as belonging to cosmopolitan cities. That brings us to the question of why on earth have we become so nervous about using the old names? Because it seems right now that to talk about if I was to talk about Bombay in public, except on Spectator TV, I would be regarded as being eccentric or politically incorrect or perhaps even insulting. And I wondered, why on earth have we come to do that? Because if you reflect on it, lots of people refer to the cities of foreign countries in their own way. So French people don't refer to London as London. They talk about Londres. They talk about not Edinburgh, but Edinburgh. So why can't we refer to Indian cities in an anglicised fashion without at all disrespecting Indians, at least those Indians who choose to use these new names?
Can you see how in India, or in a lot of cases for changing city names, it's about marking a change in the politics. And actually, Bombay was Bombay in that time, and then it went through this stage of quite right-wing Hindu nationalism. It went through a terrible economy in the late 20th century, and suddenly perhaps it doesn't seem right to call it Bombay anymore because it's so different.
Yes.
Maybe there are some people there that think actually changing the names of cities marks certain times, and,
Yes.
and that feels right for them.
Yes. So let me be clear. I'm not prescribing what Indians call their own cities.
No.
That's entirely up to them. So my first point has to do with how we pronounce the names of their cities. We don't refer to Moskva. We talk about Moscow. So why can't we talk about Bombay rather than Mumbai? If all Indians wanted to call Bombay Mumbai. But then there's the issue of, some Indians don't want to call Bombay Mumbai. Why? For political reasons, because they don't agree with Hindu nationalism. And I'm not a Hindu nationalist. It'll surprise you to hear. So why should I, or anyone else who's not a Hindu nationalist, adopt this name? And the other more principled reason is it is a kind of nationalist erasure of the past, an attempt to pretend that the British did nothing to build India. And that's a lie. That's a complete lie. I mean, the British record on India is a mixed one, but India as it now exists, and indeed Bombay and Madras and Calcutta as they now exist, would not exist were it not for the British. So a healthy nationalism would accept that part of its past while being self-confident enough to move into the future.
People in India and British Indians seem to disagree on this massively. I watched you in a debate with Mehdi Hassan about a month ago.
You mean the bloodbath?
Yeah. Actually, I thought in some cases it was the audience seemed slightly balanced.
Okay.
But the last question, I believe it was, an Indian man stood up and made a point about how much Britain did good things in India, and Mehdi actually pointed to an academic who was watching the debate, and she gave him a bit of a dressing down about how he doesn't know what he's talking about, and we can't forget about slavery and how much Britain is rich now because of what they did to India. It is interesting how much Indians disagree, and actually they're very proud about their British heritage a lot of the time. A lot of them proudly speak very good English.
Yes.
A lot of them want to watch English television.
Yes.
Regularly, my name's Natasha, I get told that I have an Indian name because it's used so frequently as a name in India.
Is it?
It is,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Even it's a Russian name, but it's incredibly popular. So they're always trying to westernize,
Right.
and yet there is this sort of undercurrent of the West apologising to Indians that don't seem to want it.
No, so, I mean, if you believe the story we're told about the decolonizers, colonialism was about white oppressors oppressing non-white victims, and the decolonizers present themselves as representing the oppressed indigenous peoples of India and Africa and Asia. But I learned early on that surprise, surprise, not all Africans and not all Asians and not all Indians think the same thing. Only a racist would assume so. I remember when I first got into trouble over my views on the British Empire in 2017, I got an email from a fellow I'd met 10 years before who was a medical consultant in Leicester, of Indian ethnicity, called Raj, and he said to me, wrote to me, he said, "Nigel, you probably don't know, but my grandfather was in the Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar when General Dyer infamously opened fire on an unarmed crowd in April 1919. My grandfather was there. I presume he survived." But Raj said, "I agree with you. The British did good things in India, not just bad." So for quite early on, I learnt. No, it's not the Western, often white, decolonizers, anti-colonialists purport to represent indigenous peoples, but no, they don't. They represent one voice.
There is lots of examples of cities changing their names and the history of nationalism all across the world. And most recently, it really picked up when the Ukraine-Russia war started, and there was massive eruptions in Western media outlets about whether they say Kyiv or Kiev. That was quite a tricky one, and for completely different reasons to Bombay versus Mumbai.
No, I've noticed that. Now. I don't know why that was. Is it because Kiev is the Russian pronunciation?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So under the circumstances...
You can see why, yeah.
Yeah, I can see why we might want to adjust our pronunciation.
Yeah.
But again, for political reasons, but in my view, for good political reasons, since Ukraine is not part of Russia and doesn't seem to want to be part of Russia. So there I would concede a change in pronunciation of names. I mean, I should make clear again, some people have commented on Twitter about my article, well, does this guy not have anything more important to worry about? And this is not, these are not vital things.
No.
And if it were the case, for example, that British diplomats in India would have to spend a lot of diplomatic capital if they use the old names, because Indian foreign ministry people would punish them for it, there's a good reason to adjust. So there can be good reasons to change names or to defer to the way and other people pronounce the names of their cities. It's just that I can't see why we in Britain shouldn't follow the custom of many, many, many Indians and retain the old names. And I'm not quite sure how it came to be that we thought that it was wrong to use the old pronunciations. I can only assume the BBC has had a lot to answer for there.
You've also written a lot about the Chagos Islands, and you vocally oppose handing them over to Mauritius. Do you worry that they might change the name of the Chagos Islands?
Well, I guess if they come to own them, it's up to them. I'm not so much worried about the change of name. I'm worried
Probably
about
the least of the worries.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the change of ownership and how that might compromise our security, and the fact that the government, to my mind, has failed to give a convincing reason for the surrender. The last reason they had was that the Americans supported it, and now it appears the Americans don't. Although President Trump may change his mind tomorrow morning, who knows? But no, I accept that, after the end of colonial rule, native peoples might, in a sense, want to imprint their own identities on places in the same way that, quite rightly, in the decades after the end of colonial rule, Africans in East and West Africa wanted the school curricula changed so that younger Africans learnt less about English kings and queens and more about Kenya and Nigeria.
Yeah.
So certainly indigenization, of course, makes sense. That doesn't mean we have to change our language in a kind of craven deference.
Nigel, you described yourself as a reluctant conscript in the culture wars.
Originally.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with lots of books now say woke is over, it's the end of woke, culture wars are over. But you've also said this year that you've been cancelled 3 times.
Yes. Yes.
Not in 2026, but
2025, yes.
Yeah. Where do you stand on all of that now? Do you feel as if the fight is won?
No, I feel as if people who are critical of wokery, whether it's on gender, race, or colonial history, we are less beleaguered, less isolated than we were when I was dragged into the culture wars in 2017. But I think winning the culture wars is enormously important, partly because the truth matters, partly because if we build policy on falsehoods, then everyone suffers. And I've seen over the last 7 years, particularly the last 5 years, resistance to authoritarian progressive wokery grow and strengthen. I chair the Free Speech Union in the UK that now has 40,000 subscribing members. lots of donors and has spawned FSUs in Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Canada, I think Germany shortly. Books like mine have been published this month. The Moroccan-born, not white, originally French-speaking lecturer in French at Oriel College, Oxford, Marie Dauda, is going to publish a book with Polity called I'm Not Your Victim, pushing back against this notion of white oppressor, black victimhood. And then 2023, the young Nigerian-born journalist Tomiwa Owolade published a book about race in Britain called This Is Not America, because he came to Britain to do an MLit in London somewhere, and all his white peers were obsessed with race, and he looked around and said, what's the problem? Right? So what significant to that is, Natasha, that whereas those who are inclined to could dismiss an old white male like me saying what I say, it's more difficult to dismiss when someone of Indian or African ethnicity starts to say it. So no, things are turning for the better, but no, we're a long way yet because from victory, because people have established their careers on wokery, and administrators in universities are committed. This is what gives their life meaning. So there are a lot of people who have reputations to lose and faces to lose if they back down, and they're not going to go without a fight. So no, the culture wars aren't over. But this is not the end. It might be the beginning of the end.
As someone who's on the receiving end of a lot of the backlash, where is it strongest? The critics of you, for example, is it universities? Would you say it's the Green Party? A lot of people are saying it's young women.
Yes. So let's put Twitter aside because.
Yeah.
Who knows who's speaking there? As I've experienced it, Natasha, the strongest resistance comes from certain parts of the academic world. In my experience, most of the leading suspects were not women, though there are some. Usually younger, ideologically zealous academics, activist academics. Who have access to the BBC in the way that I don't. I mean, I don't want to appear petulant here, but I just observe that the BBC is yet to invite me to speak on these matters. And I think I have some intelligent things to say, whereas, for example, David Olusoga has an open door there. So it's universities and then the cultural institutions that certain university graduates now dominate. That's where the centre of the opposition is. I sense in this country, judging by the press, the centre-right press and the centre press, the Times, Telegraph, Mail, etc., most people there are open to my views and probably support them. And I think most people in this country take a balanced view about the British record globally in terms of the empire, but our institutions are dominated by a certain elite, and that's the problem. The question is how to persuade them or force them to become more liberal in the sense of more open to views that they don't like.
Lord Biggar, what is your Substack called for our viewers to go and read?
It's called The Bigger Picture.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, well, I really enjoyed reading it, and
Thanks.
Thank you for coming on Spec TV.
Thanks for having me.